Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a multi-talented professional from Istanbul, Turkey, Michal Bardavid. Michal, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Michal is a dance and a movement therapist. She's a journalist and an author, and her book is titled Becoming a Peacock, Struck Your Way into Self-Love. So, Michal, before we come to your book, a few questions for you. You've had a unique career spanning both journalism and dance movement therapy. What first drew you to these two very different worlds?
Well, first of all, I've always loved dancing.
Hmm.
I've been dancing since I was 5 with my first ballet class. And throughout my life, I've always felt like I can connect with people through dance and movement.
Hmm.
And during my years in college, I had actually not Googled, it was Yahoo at the time. I was much younger then.
Yeah.
And I wrote dance and psychology on Yahoo. And I was like, oh my God, there's a whole industry called dance movement therapy.
Hmm.
It's a whole science. And I realized that you can connect with people, you can dance with people, and it's all about psychology and it's all about body language. And it just made sense to me. And that's when I started learning about it. And I, first of all, went to a workshop and then got certified. It took me years to get certified from the German Dance Therapy Association. And actually, when I was working on dance therapy, I had opened a studio and I had started giving interviews on dance therapy to
Hmm.
describe what it was and stuff
Hmm.
like that. And I realized that I felt really comfortable on camera. And at that time, there was one television station in Istanbul that aimed to broadcast in 4 different languages in Turkish, English, Russian, and Hebrew. And they offered me a job because I spoke both Turkish, English, and Hebrew, and it was my way into media, and I just felt very comfortable interviewing people as well.
Oh, amazing. Thank you for telling me this. And as a reporter covering politics and conflict in places like Turkey, Central Asia, and the Middle East, how did those experiences influence your understanding of human emotion and resilience?
The thing is, when you go to these areas, when you see conflict, when you see real people struggling with real life issues, it just teaches you so much about resilience and how people can adapt and how strong people are. And you
Yeah.
see people's emotions in their raw form. And it just taught me so much about how strong we can actually be. And it
Mm,
taught me a lot about how to connect with people and when they're in their most vulnerable, their most difficult times. And that really
mm,
taught me a lot about human
mm,
emotions.
Fascinating. How do you balance your creative, emotional work in therapy with analytical, often high pressure environment of journalism?
For me, it's like feminine and masculine and yin and yang.
Yeah.
When you're doing dance movement therapy, it's all about emotion, it's all about spirituality, and also getting connected with your own self, reflecting. But on the other hand, when you're doing journalism, it's all about being present in the moment, the realities of life, the difficulties of life. So it just connects me to both worlds in a way. And when I'm
Mm,
doing my journalism work, I take the time to sometimes reflect and connect with my own emotions. But also when I'm doing dance therapy, I try to stay grounded. So it
mm,
keeps me a balance in both worlds.
Amazing. Let's come to your book now, Michal, or which is the book titled or Becoming a Peacock, Strut Your Way into Self-Love. Tell me a little bit about your book and why did you write this book?
Well, in my book, the main idea is to understand what self-love is. And I've been teaching the basic principles of dance movement therapy in a university in Istanbul. It's called
Mm,
Bosch University for 15 years now. And
mm,
there, even though I try to teach them about their emotions and their dance therapy, the thing is that all these themes, whatever I teach them, it always comes back to self-love.
mm,
And there's this sentence called, I've seen it in a graffiti, so many years of education and nobody taught us how to love ourselves. And
mm.
I think it's just so true because, we
Absolutely.
learn about math, grammar, all these things, but we don't learn how to love ourselves in our education.
Correct.
And it's such a core thing
Yeah.
to know how to love ourselves and to embark adulthood with that self-worth idea that, you're worthy. And I think that's very important. And I've been teaching that to my students. And now with this book, I've tried to give a little bit of that so that I can try to reach a lot more people,
Mm,
hopefully.
I know. So important to be able to love ourselves. That's such an important factor in all our lives. But Michal, the peacock becomes a metaphor throughout your work. Why did you choose this symbol? And what does it represent for you personally?
Okay, so now the peacock, it's a majestic being, it's just so beautiful. And the thing is, when you take a look at a peacock in everyday life, it's just walking around humble, with their feathers tucked in, it's walking around.
Mm,
But the peacock knows how beautiful it is. And
correct.
all it needs to do to shine is just open your feathers and you're like, whew, you're
Mm,
just amazing and you can't take your eyes off that peacock. So that's how I want people to be. Know
mm.
how beautiful and amazing you are. But you don't always have to show yourself.
Yeah.
You can just be humble and take the time, walk around. But when you want to like stand in the center and shine, that's what you do. And
Mm,
peacocks can fly. And that's what I think life is when you're fully living it as a self-loving person.
mhm,
That's when you can feel naturally high, just like a
mm.
peacock.
Very
So,
interesting. And I'm not sure if you are aware, but the peacock is the national bird of India. And
yes, I know how beautiful.
and it is a crime to kill a peacock in our country.
It should be.
Absolutely. So, if you could describe the peacock mindset in one sentence, what would it be?
To live your life as a self-loving peacock is to know your self-worth,
Mm,
to make choices that are aligned with who you are, and to help others do the same. So
mm,
you support others to love themselves in a non-judgmental way, and you support them to shine just as much as you want to shine yourself as well.
mm. Great response. You also mention Abraham Maslow's concept of self-actualization. How does that idea connect to the modern journey of self-worth and confidence?
Well, according to Maslow, to be a self-actualization and to live like that, you need to fulfill your own potential, to be who you're meant to be, to
Correct.
fulfill that. But self-esteem is below that, and that's I think the same in life with the peacock metaphor that I have. In order to fulfill your dreams and even chase the dream job that you want or chase the relationship that you want, whatever you want to do in order to fulfill your potential, first of all you need to love yourself,
Mm,
because if you don't feel that you deserve love, if you don't feel you deserve worthiness, then you're not going to chase the dream job, you're not
mm,
going to be who you are meant to be
yeah.
if you don't feel that self-love. So it's step
Mm,
by step and it just makes
mm.
really sense together.
Well said. One of your first chapters says a peacock knows it's worthy. Why do so many people struggle to separate their self-worth from external validation?
I think, unfortunately, it's a little bit related to how we grow up with our parents or society, communities. We have, most of us at least, grow up with this belief that if I, if I behave in this certain way, or if
Mm,
I'm this person, if I'm I behave in a way that is accepted by society, only then, under these conditions, will I be worthy or will I be loved.
mm,
If I behave this way, my parents will accept me. If I behave this way, if my sexuality is a certain way, if I
mm,
express myself in a certain way, then I will be accepted. But
mm,
real love is not conditional, it's unconditional. You
mm,
are worthy because of who you are,
mm.
in whatever shape or form you are, in your
Right.
authentic self, not
Mm,
because of a certain way that you need to behave.
amazing. You also say a peacock can take rejection. How do you personally deal with rejection today differently from when you were younger?
Well, when I was rejected younger, I would take it so personally. I would,
Correct.
my heart would break. It would be like, okay, then I don't deserve to be loved. I must
Mm,
not be worthy enough. I must not be pretty enough. I must
mm,
not be smart enough if it's a
mm,
job or whatever.
mm,
So it would always be about me. But actually, when we take a look at rejection, it's usually not about you. It's about the match, and it's not the right match. It's not the right person. It's not the right job.
mm,
So we have to understand that when we are rejected by whatever situation, then okay, this was not for me. And it's not just about me. And
Mm.
okay, I'm not saying we're not going to be affected at all. Of course, it's going to hurt a little bit if you're not accepted or
Yeah.
by the job or the person. But the point is not to be destroyed or not to lose your center when
Mm.
you're rejected. It
Mm.
can stink. Maybe you move around a little bit, but come back to your center and
Mm.
know who you are. Just because
Well,
you're rejected doesn't mean that you're not worthy.
very well said. A peacock dares to fail, turns failure into empowerment. How did your own professional setbacks shape this message?
Well, one of my main failures was that I tried to open a studio for dance therapy years back, and I failed because I couldn't market at all, no promotion. It was incredibly difficult. But it it wasn't just the lessons that I learned in terms of, okay, I should know marketing before actually trying to embark upon something. It's the feeling of empowerment that comes from trying.
Mm.
I feel that, you know what? I tried something, I believed in myself, so I feel strong that I can try it again. And
Mm.
it's important to learn from my failures that I can try over and over again. And again, it does not mean that just because I failed, I'm not worthy or strong. I am
Mm.
strong and I
Correct.
have the courage to try.
Mm.
So that's important.
Mm. Amazing. Your book also says a peacock doesn't judge and a peacock is authentic. These are very powerful calls for compassion. Why do you think authenticity is still so hard for so many people?
It's fear. It's fear that if I show my true self, then I'm not going to be accepted. It's very similar to the worthiness idea. It's like if I show who I am with
Mm.
all of my feathers, all of my true colors, then people are not going to like me. I'm different. I'm not the norm.
Yeah.
But the idea is to be who you are with your own uniqueness. And
Mm.
authenticity actually brings better connections because you feel real, you feel the real connection, you feel the real emotions of
Mm.
that person, the true
Mm.
self. Because and also you feel happiest when you are authentic, when
Mm.
you are who you truly are meant to be,
Mm.
you're authentic. That's when you love yourself much more.
Mm. To understand this point better, can you give me an example?
If a person sexuality is one thing. I mean, I don't want to go into something political, but
Yeah.
if you if you have a different sexual preference and you believe that your society won't accept you for that, you try to shape yourself into
Mm.
becoming a different person,
Yeah.
and you're not going to feel happy. You're always going to feel suppressing your emotions, and that's just going to
Mm.
make you unhappy.
Mm. Well said. You've also written about resilience through your daughter's experiences with bullying. What did that moment teach you, both as a mother and a therapist?
I think that what it taught me is very similar, that it's not just about teaching children and ourselves to connect with our emotions, which is really
Hmm.
important, but also to teach them about boundaries, about personal space, and the fact that, we have to show in a clear, direct way where our boundaries are, and
Mm.
also that if you feel that someone is coming to you in a bullying stance, then you have to stand your ground and you have to say a no. So I
Mm.
taught my daughter how to say no, how to
Mm.
have your strong voice,
Mm.
not just connecting with yourself, but also making sure that the person in front of you knows who you are and that you will stand your
Absolutely.
ground.
Absolutely. And that's a lesson I think your daughter will remember all her life. Very powerful
So
message. Thank you. Um, a peacock knows abuse is never justified, is what you say in one of the book's most intense sections. Tell me a little bit more about this and what made you decide to share such a personal and a painful story.
it was a hard decision because I mentioned a traumatizing incident that happened to me.
Mhm.
And a lot more people go through much more traumatizing situations. It could be sexual abuse, physical abuse, but also emotional abuse is very important as well. But I wanted people to feel that they are not alone. And the
Mm.
more that I talk to people about this, my students, my friends, when I open up, I realize that so many more people opened up to me and they're like, you know what? I actually went through something similar myself. And they felt the right to actually open up, that they
Mm.
could. And I wanted to open up this space because when you relate to people and tell them, you know what, you're not alone, they feel that we can be together. It's solidarity as much as it is opening up and expressing myself.
Mm,
And I wanted people to know that that also does not define your worthiness. You are not what has happened to you. That is something, that is an experience. That
mm,
does not define you. Yes, it's part of your story, but that is not who you are.
mm. The tone of becoming a peacock feels deeply personal, yet universally relatable. How did you maintain that balance between vulnerability and guidance?
Well, I tried to imagine that I was talking to a friend, and that's what I wanted the reader to feel. Not like I'm a teacher, not like I'm standing from above. I'm like right there with you. We're one-on-one, just having a discussion, talking in my most open, vulnerable state. And
Hmm.
I hoped that people would feel the connection, that they would feel that I'm trying to be in my most honest self, and they would feel that they could trust me and that that could come across. And I think that was my target, to feel like that book is you reading something that a friend has shared and that you,
Hmm.
you feel you can do the same with someone else.
Amazing. Time for two more questions for you, Michal. The chapter A Peacock Has Positive Inner Voice speaks about the power of self-talk. What daily practices help you nurture that inner kindness?
In everyday life, it sometimes we forget to be kind to ourselves. Like in traffic, you're rushing, you put pressure, you want to achieve some goal, you want
Hmm.
to achieve, you just, even in traffic where you're trying to get somewhere, that's also a goal, but also
Correct.
achieving a bigger goal, like your project or something like that. And we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. And in those moments, it's important to just slow down and be
Hmm.
like, Michal, take it easy. You're doing your best.
Hmm.
Just like you would talk to your best friend, because
Hmm.
that's how you should be for
Hmm.
yourself. You should be talking to yourself as if you're your best friend, your
Yeah.
kindest self. Take it easy. You're doing good. We can do better. You're trying. You're doing good. Just being nice to yourself and like taking care of yourself. It's not just physical. It's just not talking. It's also physical. I'm a
Correct.
dance therapist, so it's like hugging yourself, taking a moment to like hold
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
Kiss your hand every now and then. Just show self-love.
Absolutely. And my last question for you comes back to self-love. Do you believe self-love can be taught, or must it be discovered through lived experiences?
I think both, but it should definitely be taught. I
Mm.
think if we can learn this at a young age, it should be something that we know as adults and that
Mm.
we should try to pass on to our children and our next generations, the students and whoever we talk to. And at a young age, if we grow up to know that we are worthy, that we, just by being, because of who we are, and
Mm.
that we do not need anyone's approval for anything to be
Mm.
a self-loving person and to feel worthy. That is something that we can teach our children at a young age, and I think we should definitely do it.
Amazing. And on that note, Michal, I just want to say what a fascinating conversation this has been. I just love the way you have drawn so many lessons on self-love from the life of a peacock, and the way you have interpreted so many different aspects of the life of a peacock. Thank you so much for speaking to me and giving us such amazing and powerful lessons. All the very best to you.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.